Hello, Harmony. Welcome to the Work Podcast.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for having me.
I'm like totally nerding out because I've seen you speak at so many astrology podcasts and YouTube videos that it's just such an honor to have you here to share your wisdom. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So Harmony is an expert, I would say, on the Eris archetype, right? For those of for those of us who don't quite know what Eris is in astrology, and for the astrology novices, what is Eris?
So Eris is a new body that was discovered in 2005. And interestingly, I actually have this whole masterclass I did on Eris. I get into her myth and her archetype and even the etymology of her name. When she was discovered, she led to the demotion of Pluto. Remember when all of a sudden they told us Pluto's not a planet?
Yes.
Because of Eris.
Yeah.
Because Eris was discovered, and actually a promoted Ceres, who was previously seen as just an asteroid, promoted Ceres to dwarf planet. And I don't know if you know your Greek mythology, but Pluto and Ceres have a history together because Pluto abducted Ceres' daughter Persephone.
Yeah.
And actually, when Eris was discovered, the discoverer wanted to name her Persephone. But there was already an asteroid named Persephone, and there's some name rule in the science community. If it's an asteroid, you can't name it a planet. I don't even know. And so he ended up coming up with Eris, and he said he really wanted to honor the divine feminine, like the female goddesses. So she's the goddess of discord and chaos. And she gets a bad rap. Yes, she definitely can be disruptive, but she's an activist and a warrior goddess. Like she comes in and shines a light on the shadow that no one wants to look at. And she is disruptive in that way because it's like wherever we thought things were just peaceful and harmonious, but we were sweeping things under the carpet, she comes in and pulls up the carpet and goes, look at this. And she's the new body that got discovered in the 21st century. And historically, every time a new body is discovered, it is completely connected to the energy that is kind of birthing in the collective. Starting like the 18th century, Uranus was discovered, and Uranus rules technology. And then Neptune was discovered in the 19th century and is connected to pharmaceutical medicines and spiritualism. And these were all like the dawn of these things at these times. 20th century was Pluto. Pluto rules depth psychology, but also nuclear power. It's when we split the atom and made the first bomb. So each time we have this body discovered, something is erupting into the collective. And with Eris in the 21st century, she's like the guiding archetype of this 21st century. And in her highest, she is like the female warrior. Like she's the activist. She's the one who's like calling out the stuff, And yeah, it's not the easiest energy, but it's a necessary energy, especially when too much has kind of piled up and gotten toxic and stagnant, particularly, if you just look around at like the patriarchal paradigms, Eris will be the disruptor of this. So her entry into the scene is powerful.
And she was the one who wasn't invited to the goddess party, right?
Yeah, well, it wasn't just a goddess party, it was a wedding. So and it made sense in some ways, like, do you want to invite chaos and discord to the wedding party? Maybe not, the opposite of Eris. She's another variation of her is discordia. And then the opposite of Eris and discordia is harmonia, harmony. So she wasn't invited because it was wedding party and they didn't want discord at the wedding party, but she showed up pissed off like the shadow, and I'm really big into shadow work, which is all about looking at the stuff that's in your unconscious, that's operating behind the scenes, that's informing your beliefs and how you see things. And she was kind of a representation of the shadow that wasn't invited. So she showed up unexpected and disrupted the whole thing. And then she had a golden apple, and on the apple it said, "To the fairest." And she tossed it amongst the goddesses, and they proceeded to fight over who was the most beautiful. And I remember when I first heard this story, that was the part where I was like, what? Because in my mind, like, I'm like, divine beings, divine goddesses, why are they fighting over who's most beautiful? Like, that feels so superficial to me. And I would imagine if I'm in my full divine power, I'm not going to care about that. And so it was like this whole revealing of what was the underbelly of the shadow that was going on in the sisterhood. So yeah, she showed up at the party. She wasn't invited.
I love that story because maybe it's like my little mischievous Aries side, because I know Eris is in Aries,
Yes.
that it's sometimes you need that mischievous person to be invited to the party to show and reveal what's really underneath that no one's like ready to look at or wants to look at, but it's like, here it is.
Yep. Like coyote medicine, it's necessary. It's disruptive and it's necessary. And she comes along when things need to be disrupted, when they've gotten so stagnant and stuck and, toxic, that if we continue going in that direction, it's going to collapse. And so she comes in and breathes new life into things. Initially, it's not going to look so, wonderful, but she does bring in new life and new energy. I love her. I think she's amazing, but
And how is the relationship between Eris and Pluto showing the shadows of America, the USA at this moment? Because I feel like every time there's like a Pluto and Eris activation, something gets revealed.
yeah, well, so we've had 5 Pluto Eris squares, and actually the 5th one is happening this week as we're recording this podcast. So Pluto stationed, or actually I think a couple hours ago, Pluto stationed direct came to a standstill. Retrograde is when we look at the planets and they appear to be going backwards. If you were actually going to fly out in the atmosphere, nobody stops and turns around. It goes backwards in the orbit, but it's based on our perspective on Earth. And the ancients always paid attention to when planets were going backwards. So Pluto is in the underworld retrograde. Now he's stationed direct. And in 2 days, we have him squaring Eris for the 5th and final time. The first one was January 26th of 2020. The second was June 14th of 2020, December 10, and then this year, August 27th, and then October 8th. So, I think about like 20, 100 years down the line, when people talk about 2020 to 2021, what will they think about? And of course, I'm sure anybody listening to this is going to have light bulbs going on, ding, ding, ding. Like that was COVID. That was like this insanity that erupted all over the planet that everybody had some level of impact from. It was a worldwide experience. And interestingly, when the first square happened, was right when COVID was coming into America, but we didn't know yet. I know many people who actually had it in January of 2020, but we didn't get, the official notice until like the first week of March. That was also incidentally the day that Kobe Bryant's helicopter went down.
Yeah,
Exact day.
I
Yeah.
remember that.
Yes. I remember expecting something very unexpected to happen. And, and then when I heard that news, I was actually in Ojai at the time too. So I was just like an hour from the area where that happened. But also behind the scenes, all this COVID stuff was happening. So Pluto is the lord of the underworld, and he drags us down to the depths and the bottom of whatever to show us what we're not looking at. And Eris has a similar energy too. She's just more like fiery, whereas Pluto kind of brings you into the depths. I feel like Eris kind of drags the depths up. So they're kind of, those 2 different movements. Pluto's in Capricorn, and he has been since 2008. And he is excavating the shadow of government, big business, patriarchal consciousness. I mean, these are all Capricorn type things. Traditions and expectations, things we've always done that everybody does or that we were told we need to do. Like, we're in a huge time of deconstructing these patriarchal paradigms and ways of doing and being that are just so ingrained. Often we don't even realize until we start questioning it. And then we're like, oh, wow, and so Pluto is exposing that. And then Eris is coming in and, ripping off the veil from our eyes where we were, kind of checked out or diluted. And a part of Eris actually, for me and in my work and shadow work, especially in Aries, because yeah, Eris is in Aries for like 100 years. She's the slowest moving planet. Like it takes her 556 years to go through all the signs. So she's like hangs out for a long time, and she doesn't have a equal orbit. So she'll spend longer times in certain signs and shorter times in others. But part of Eris and Aries is getting in touch with anger and rage in healthy ways. I mean, there's shadow work practices to connect with that fire and that force of energy in skillful ways that serve. I there's a book, and I'm trying to remember, Lama Rod Owens. Sacred Rage. What is it called? Love and Rage. Love and Rage. And he's an activist, and he talks about how initially when he got into activism, it was all fueled by his anger. And then he had these experiences of like going into his own wounds and pain from his childhood and realizing what was undigested and not processed in his own pain and wounds that was actually fueling his activism. So then he did all this work getting into his grief and his sadness, and he was able to balance the two. And then it positively impacted the work he does in the world. And so for me, Eris is this call to like, yeah, we need to wake up to where are we stuffing our anger? Some of us stuff it, right? And sweep it under the carpet. Others of us act out in it and we're aggressive and dominating. All of us can stand to work to come to a better relationship with those energies. And so Eris is also bringing that up. Eris is very connected to the Me Too movement. Mm-hmm. And women claiming their voices and speaking up and, getting angry, but then using that with the heart. That's important.
Yeah, I love how you were talking about Pluto in Capricorn and how it went into Capricorn in 2008, which was the financial crisis in America.
Yes.
Which I feel like that was an opportunity and an invitation to see how our financial system was failing us, but I think we all kind of stuffed that in, right? And then Eris is here as the feminine archetype to help us digest and help us to transmute some of the rage that I think collectively through also epigenetically through our ancestors we've kind of like suppressed.
Yeah, that is such a big thing too, because we're not just showing up as us. We're showing up with our ancestors, our DNA, our previous lifetimes, if you believe in that. I do. It's not just what's happening in this moment. There's so much that we carry with us, and that's important to understand. And that to me is a really big part of Pluto Return for America. Like the Pluto Eris square from 2020 to 2021 is like the setup for Pluto Return for America, which is in 2022. And Pluto returns only happen for countries because you have to be like 250 years old to have a Pluto return. So it's not something that we can track like on a personal level, but we can definitely track it historically, looking at countries and births of organizations or whatever. And so Pluto return, he's a lord of the underworld, right? He's about the shadow, what's hidden. He's also about wealth and depth and transformation. But my sense of Pluto return for America is like returning back to all the undigested shadow that our country was built upon, like I'm part Hawaiian. And so I have it in my DNA experience and my lineage that takeover, the missionaries coming, and then America actually overthrowing the monarchy and imprisoning the queen and taking the land, and then suppressing our religion and our mystical tradition and even our language. They weren't allowed to speak Hawaiian. They weren't allowed to pray to their gods and goddesses. Same thing happened to the Native Americans and the Eskimos. And same thing happened to the African Americans who got brought here to be slaves. Like our country was built on taking land from other people and abusing and using other people to build up, our wonderful country. And that's in our shadow. And that has not been fully owned, atoned for, and healed. And it has to be in order for our country to evolve. We can totally collapse as a country if we don't want to do the work to work on that and evolve. I mean, that's also an option, but that's not what I'm wanting. I would like our country to evolve and make amends and deal with the undigested shadow from the past. And so that's also part of everything we're seeing erupt in the collective, is more of these different peoples, and especially the indigenous people, speaking up and using their voice and bringing light to things that we didn't know. Like, I remember I saw, it was like last year, there was this meme or whatever, the mountains where they like carved the presidents' heads into. I always
Rushmore.
Thank you. I'm always forgetting the name of it, probably because it doesn't feel right to call it that name, because it used to have a Native American name.
Yeah.
Yes, it was sacred land. It was 6 grandfathers, not 4 presidents, 6 grandfathers' faces in the natural rock. And it was a sacred, sacred site to the people of that land. And they took it, and then they like carved into it our, white president men. And so and I remember I was like, holy crap, I never heard that before. And when I reposted it, I had a lot of people go, I didn't know that. So this is, to me, part of it is like, we got to remember, we have to remember what was done. And yes, maybe we who are here today didn't do it, but our ancestors did. And we need to, they're not alive anymore to make amends. We have to do that work. So I'm getting chills, actually.
You said something I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask you to touch upon, if you could, a little bit more of the sacred anger. Because when you said that, I immediately thought of the Black Lives Matter movement and the Me Too movement. And there's a ton of other movements going on right now where the world is really frustrated, and you can feel that anger like vibrating. It's like you can feel the shaking.
Yeah.
But how can you just talk a little bit more about that? And
yeah. So for me, that energy is a necessary energy to shake up what's been like stuffed, repressed, stagnated. Like it's like a volcano, which when you see a volcano, it's a natural phenomenon. You don't go, oh, the earth is pissed off and is being whatever, call it a name. I mean, it's the natural energy of what happens when things build up, right? Same thing with anger and rage. In my shadow work training for the last 5 or 6 years, like one of the biggest pieces for me actually was working with anger. I actually stuffed it a lot. I bypassed it. I was always understanding everybody's pain and their position, and I would like override. But then, stuffed anger will manifest in the body as illness and disease, depression. Like anger, just because you stuff it doesn't mean it goes away. And so for me, a big part of my own empowerment and transformation was getting in touch with my anger. And I will say that is a common thing for women or feminine identified beings, like people who really are more relational, because there's this judgment that anger is not relational, that it actually creates disruption. But there is a way to work with anger from the heart. My teacher teaches this. It's called heart anger. So that it's fierce and it's clear and it's true, but it's still coming from love. That to me is a big piece of working with anger. Anger can't be used to dehumanize, because then we're just doing what everybody else is doing that's created all problems in the world. Like when it comes from the power of the heart, it can be fierce, and it can be like, it can call a spade, and it can call things out, but it can do it in a way where it can kind of encourage us all to rise to meet the transformational energies that are available to us. So I think it's such an important point on the path of awakening and healing is to get into that space of anger and rage. It helps to have support with that, to have, whether it's a therapist that you work with or practices, like my teacher teaches like practices, like conscious rant, like say like something's going on and you're like so upset. Like you just go outside or go into your room, go somewhere where you can be alone, scream into a pillow, like get it all out, like scream the kind of scream that would like stop people on the street kind of scream, but like let it out. Or go have a conscious rant where for 2 minutes you just full force go off and say all the things you want to say that maybe they're not enlightened or whatever, but you're like getting it out, and then you can come back to whatever the thing is, the situation is, and you can show up in a different way because you've allowed this energy that's building up to move through. Anger is often comes in when it needs to motivate us to take action or to set boundaries. Like literally all emotions are simply information. They're neutral, actually, in and of themselves. It's what we do with them that informs if they're positive or negative. So anger comes in and shows you where your boundary has been crossed, where you need to stand up for something, where you need to deal with something, and you use it as such, and then it's healthy and it's, it helps you evolve. So yeah, it's anger and rage work is so important.
It's beautiful. And that's why I love astrology, is because it helps us and guides us through our emotions and energy. And even astrology is, to me anyway, personally, noticing patterns and cycles, and how each time we go, we have more information and more wisdom. And just going back to what you were saying about the Pluto return in the US, it just seems like the day of reckoning is coming for us as Americans. And I'm just wondering your perspective on like, so I believe in karma, like the idea of the law of cause and effect. And unfortunately or fortunately, like we're all a part of the collective of Americans, right? Like maybe our ancestors didn't do the harm, but we're a part of this country. And so um, everybody has to do their own shadow work, and also the shadow work collectively of America, of like decolonizing our minds and our behaviors and everything like that. So in your opinion, is this just like our time? It is time.
Yeah, I mean, yes. This is why one of the ways I focus for my work is on like working one-to-one with people. I first of all, number one is my own work. Like as a teacher, as an astrologer, I put as much, if not more, energy into my own inner work and shadow work and training and learning with other teachers as I do as a teacher and as an astrologer. And I think that's so important to like make sure you're also doing your own work. And then I do a lot of supporting other people of doing their personal work, because I find that each of us has our area that we influence. Like we each have the thing we're like passionate about, that we're ready to take a stand for, and so each of us getting clearer in our own psyches, working through the blockages, becoming more embodied. One of the things about Western culture is it totally keeps us either disembodied entirely or like heart up, neck up, in the head. And honestly, when we're not fully in our bodies, we're more easy to manipulate. And it's easier for other energies and things to come in and operate through us or take over. And like, we need to be fully down and in. And I'm of the belief that the spiritual growth and evolution that's happening on the planet is not an evolution of ascension, but it's actually descension. It's like coming down and in, fully being here on the earth, anchoring the light. But as you do that, as the light comes in more and more, it's going to illuminate whatever is blocked and in the shadow. So, more of us doing the personal work, and then we also find those things we are driven about, passionate about, called towards. And then we go, I sort of visualize it as like all these little like, little acupuncture points of light on the planet, and then interconnecting with each other, and then like weaving and spreading. And I don't know, it's like this visual I get in my mind, but because it's like one of us can't do it alone. It takes a community. I actually had this dream. I'm trying to remember when it was. It was a few years ago. And I've shared it before, but I had this dream where I was looking at this lake, and it was dark and there was a full moon. And then the lady of the lake started rising, which is like a archetype of the divine feminine, the empowered feminine. But right after she started rising, thousands of women were rising out of this lake. And this loud, booming voice said, "It's not the return of the one, it's the return of the many." And that, yes, that's what we have to do as we each rise and remember who we are and why we're here, and do the work to heal and empower ourselves. Like all of us rising together, that's like a game changer. Yeah. Yeah, I love that dream. It was a great dream.
So what you're
Wow.
saying is the divine feminine is going to help heal the world.
Yes, which is something that we all have. So, and it's not about women necessarily, it is to a degree. And we each have the feminine within us. And so this is about the principle of like nurturing and caring and inclusiveness and love and connectedness. Unfortunately, the shadow of the patriarchal, masculine energy is more just focused on, this is mine, I'm going to, conquer the world. This is, I'm thinking about myself first. The divine feminine and the mother archetype, the great mother archetype, is relational. It's like, I'm not going to do this. It's going to be good for me, but it's going to like harm other people or take from other people. So it's really, and one of the things that's important for this really is opening up the hearts and cultivating empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And like my bio on my website is like 10 years old, but anyhow, it's still, to be honest, is my greatest wish. I put like my greatest dream, or I don't remember the exact words, but something like my greatest wish for humanity is that all the heart chakras on the planet open with grace and ease. Because if everyone's heart was open, do you understand? Like, we wouldn't even be having the problems we're having. We'd be taking care of the earth, and we'd be taking care of each other, and we wouldn't be taking land from people and enslaving people. And you can't do that when your heart is open and you can feel
Right.
what other people are going through. So that to me is important in this conversation.
By the way, Harmony wrote an amazing article about the US Pluto return. It's so captivating. I felt like I was reading like it's something just out of like Time magazine or something. Um, and I don't know the exact countries, but I've read somewhere else as well that when a country goes through a Pluto return, which we're heading into, the empire kind of comes down, the empire strikes back. And so, what do you foresee for us? Like, if you had an idea of, um, let's say, worst case scenario or best case scenario, if we all got our shit together.
Well, one thing I want to say, so I want to just give the dates for the Pluto return. So Pluto return is 2022. The first one is February 20th, 2022, and then July 11th, December 28th, all next year. So Pluto returns, goes backwards, goes over it again. But then when you look at the progress chart of America, which is how the natal chart shifts and changes, Pluto return actually goes from all the way from 2022 natal Pluto to progress Pluto 2023 to 2024. Then Eris comes along in 2033, and she proceeds to square Pluto for like both natal and progressed for 15 years, 2033 to 2048. So I mean, to be honest, I feel like it's going to be after 2048 when we actually see the full transformation of our country. And I feel like from now and then it's going to be that journey. And part of why I'm so passionate about shadow work is when you do the work on your stuff and your wounds and your pain, you start clearing out the blockages. You become a more of an open vessel that can receive inspiration from the universe or the divine or whatever you want to call it, God, goddess, all that is. And you're better able to be of service because you're working through some of your stuff that maybe held you back from doing that. So I really feel like we need more people rising into positions of leadership and authority in various, areas of life that have this divine feminine energy. It doesn't have to just be women. It can be women, men, non-binary beings. If you honor the feminine, then she's going to want to come through. and then also, the warrior people, the ones who are ready to take a stand, kind of like that biblical story, Goliath. Oh my God, what is his name?
David and the Goliath.
Yeah, what was the boy's name? I'm forgetting.
Oh, David.
Thank you.
David.
Yeah.
Oh, you said David. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. I was raised born again Christian, so I shouldn't have forgotten that one. But yeah, kind of like that, like standing up to oppression, standing up to the bully, standing up to the one who looks more powerful and seems to have all the power, but actually doesn't truly, because it's not the power of the heart. It's not the power of full awakened consciousness. It's on the physical 3D world, it looks powerful, but on all the other dimensions, it's actually not. And we need to remember that. So yeah, I mean, I do feel like we're heading down an intense portal for America. I will say that. I mean, I don't want to like bum anybody out, but I think, I just look at my own life. So whenever I've had like the most intense things happen, it always precedes a massive transformation and rebirth of my life. And when I'm in it, I'm like, what the hell? Why am I here? Like, and then I get out the other side and I'm like, I am so grateful for that. Yeah. It like helped bring me to where I am now. And it's about perspective, So I feel like we're in that space as a country. And I really think paying attention the last few years, I mean, especially the Pluto Eris square years, but even before that, was it 2016 or 17 that Uranus was conjunct Eris? So we've been seeing this kind of amp up and build. And so just paying attention to what's been getting activated, all of this, everything, around race and colonization and around resources. And I mean, we just had, I don't know if you saw, there's some papers got released called the Pandora Papers, which is like aptly the goddess. And literally Pandora would be like another facet of Eris. Literally, like open up the box and let's see what's coming out kind of thing. And so the Pandora Papers talking about these billionaires having trillions of dollars offshore while our planet's being destroyed and people are starving and like working 3 jobs to make ends meet and sick and can't get health care. It's like ridiculous. And then the other day we had the woman who was the whistleblower for Facebook, and I actually think maybe it was the new moon write-up. I can't remember, something I wrote recently. There were aspects where I was like, this is about women and people who honor the feminine, claiming their voice and speaking up and speaking the truth. And then that came in. I was like, oh, that's interesting timing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I actually feel like it's a very powerful time to be alive and be on the planet. And it's intense, it's intense. Our country has a lot of shadow to deal with.
Yes. And I was actually just going to, Britt, did you want to ask anything? I feel like I'm going off on my astrology geekiness.
I mean, I'm just sort of in awe and listening to all the aspects of this. I have like a million thoughts a second when you speak, but I'm going to hold my questions until the end because I feel like you kind of touch on some of them.
So speaking of the USA shadow and all that entails, right? And it sounds like from what you were saying about how we all have to do our shadow work, but getting to that point, we have to kind of all be on the same page somewhat, and people realizing that there are shadows to begin with. And so, which I feel like, you know, in some ways, our divine feminine mother, Gaia, right, kind of is like angry at us and is like, um, you know, putting out a disease, you know, having all these natural disasters to get our attention. But I don't think people are really understanding that there is something to be seen here with our own behaviors. So, as a white-bodied person who, you know, you're doing this work and you're helping other people, how can we get more people involved? And you know, we can't change anybody, right? We can't make people do this work, but
I know I completely understand this question because I've had a lot of moments of talking to the universe. And, you know, one thing I will say, I've really been like feeling into and working with the spectrum of narcissism and then empathy or codependency. And so historically, extreme narcissists are usually not the ones that go to therapy and want to work on themselves, right? Because extreme narcissism thinks I'm God or I'm great or I'm whatever. Empaths, codependents are always the ones that first get into therapy. But what I've noticed is that the more people who are empaths, who do maybe tend to the codependency, that do the work around healthy narcissism and boundaries, because it is a continuum. Extreme narcissism, and even very extreme sociopathy, is this end of the spectrum. But the other end is being so empathic that it's not about you, it's about everyone else and what they're feeling and needing. Empath, codependent people need to have healthier narcissism. They need to like come into a place of, hey, this is me, this is my needs, here are my boundaries. No, I'm not gonna, you know, deal with your energy. I mean, simply setting boundaries online, like when people start arguing on, you know, Facebook threads, disengage. Like, because what's the point of arguing with somebody who clearly all they want to do is argue and don't actually want to hear any other perspective? You may as well save your energy. And so it's just like learning to boundary up, because these two extreme ends of the spectrum have like a codependent relationship. They actually feed off each other like parasite and host. And so if host gets strong and has boundaries and can't be fed off of anymore, what are all these beings over here going to do? They're either going to like leave or, you know, go into the next dimension, I don't know, or they're going to wake up because they can't keep doing what they've always done. So I just focus on myself and the people in my life, my students and clients who want to do the work, as opposed to focusing on how do we get people who clearly don't want to do the work to do the work. Because I know the more of us that get clear, that get boundary, that get empowered, that is going to shift the dynamic, because it has to, because one half of the dynamic is no longer going to show up the way that it was for this to even work. So that's how I look at it. To me, it's the more empowering place to be than looking at all the people who aren't doing the work, who are destroying the planet, who are harming people, and just getting upset that they're not waking up. That's not a very empowered place to be. And that keeps me focused outside of myself. So that's how I've been, you know, but I definitely have my moments, you know, where I see like the destruction of the earth and harming of people. And I'm just like, seriously?
Yeah, we're repeating cycles.
Yes. Yeah. And there's just so there's just so much. I mean, there was another meme. Memes are fun. This was years ago though. Where there was this meme where it said, I'm currently at odds with, how is it worded? I'm currently at odds with wanting to stay informed, but also stay sane.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, to be really well informed makes you aware of all the stuff. And then you're like, really? Oh my God, but then to stay sane, sometimes you need to just like shut down for a little bit, and the sun is coming in. Maybe sit back a little. There we go. So yeah. And then also, hey, just a shadow work practice. When I'm, or you or anybody is like seeing people destroying the planet, harming people, not doing their work, go inside. What is that bringing up in me? Do I have anger and rage? Do I have grief and sadness? Is my heart breaking? Like, what is going on in my body and my being when I see that? Not because I'm making myself responsible, but because I'm honoring my own experience of what that means to me, and then just, for me, emotional work is one of the biggest ways of fully coming in, because our emotions are swirling in our bodies, and our undigested emotions are lodged in our physical body and come through as health issues and all kinds of stuff. Oh, your doggy is so cute.
Thank you.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know if that totally answers your question.
It does. Well, you want to go?
Yeah, I guess, I just, with all of this energy and with what you can see based on Pluto returns,
Yes.
and the wisdom from the cosmos, do you see, I don't know if this is something you can see, but a shift in power, not just a movement from those in power now, but like almost like a rebalancing or repositioning of those who historically have not had power. I mean, and because so many groups of people don't have power, there's only one group of people that really have power. And so what does that mean? I mean, like when you look at that, I don't want to name it, so we can all just sort of know the name, but like what is that?
Yeah. So what's interesting in astrology is there's the moon cycle once a month. There's the solar cycle once a year. There's the Jupiter cycle, that's 12 years. Saturn is 30 years. Uranus is 84. Eris, as I said, is 556 years. And then there's these greater cycles of the stars. And the star cycles are 26,000 year cycles. Takes them 26,000 years to precess and slowly move through all the signs. And these are the cycles that all the mystical traditions were paying attention to. It's connected to the Kali Yuga and the Iron Age, and any of like the Mayans talking about or the what is the other tradition? Oh, I'm forgetting, where they talk about the fifth sun. Like, they're looking at these greater cycles. So one of the stars, Regulus, is the heart of the lion and is considered the royal fixed star of leadership. It's one of the 4 royal fixed stars. There's Fomalhaut in Pisces now, used to be in Aquarius. And there's Antares in Sagittarius, now used to be Scorpio. Aldebaran in Gemini, now used to be Taurus. And then there's Regulus. And Regulus is the last of them, actually, that moved out of fixed signs into mutable and moved into Virgo. And so Regulus just moved into Virgo in 2012. And the royal fixed star of leadership, moving out of Leo, solar, hero, king, royal kind of energy, to Virgo, the divine feminine, the virgin. She is the one that wants to serve and help and heal. She's, she's a woman. And literally Regulus moving into Virgo heralds a shift of leadership from the solar king hero myth to the divine feminine and the servant. And literally, this is about the leader that is a servant. I mean, that's also something we need to like reclaim, Oh, you're on mute.
That's so interesting. I find that fascinating.
I have an article, I think on my website, divineharmony.com, pinned to the main page is the article about Pluto return. And I'm pretty sure I have the article about Regulus moving into Virgo. And I titled it, "The Meek Shall Inherit the Earth." Because Virgo is like the servant. Virgo literally is the servant and Leo is the king. And so we've got leadership moving from I'm the king to I'm the servant. I'm here to serve the earth. I'm here to help and heal. And it also literally speaks to a shift of leadership to women and those who honor the divine feminine. So this just moved in 2012, and it will stay in Virgo for 2,000 years. So we're literally like 9 years into a 2,000-year cycle that speaks to this exact shift that you're asking about. But it's, it takes 2,000 years to come full circle. But we're at the beginning.
So patience.
Yes. Yeah. And I kind of, sometimes I visualize like these bigger cycles. It's like, we're here for it, right? So we're like running the marathon and we're passing the baton to each other. And then like whoever's our children and our children's children and the young ones ahead of us, we're going to be passing it to them. What's amazing is about the kids coming in these days. My God.
Oh, yeah, they're woke.
Oh, they're woke and they are intense. I have one myself. Like defiant, like questioning authority, will not just do what you tell, like has to understand why and has to like, like a lawyer, like discuss everything. And it's like these kids are here to completely question and take down the traditions and things we've always done, and it's amazing to me some of the things that these kids are asking questions about. And I'm like, wow, why didn't I ask about that when I was young? Why did I just like take it? These kids don't. They're very intense to parent. They are.
What I want to know is do we see with the wisdom and brilliance and hope that these children bring, does that mean that there'll be a planet here or that we will survive the planet? I guess that's what I'm really
Oh my God. You're so doomsday sometimes.
No.
I have to say, I understand the question. I mean, if you look at like the historical stories of like Atlantis, for example, that many people think is a myth, but I actually think is real. This planet's been real a long time. Yeah. Their story was that their technology and intelligence got so advanced, but it was out of balance with their morality and their compassion and their care. So it was literally the masculine principle of dominate, innovate, make things happen was out of balance with the relational principle. And that's why the ship, not the ship, the land went down under the water. And so it's a valid question. I mean, I think we are each here to decide what is going to happen. And again, I really think the more of us that are doing our inner work and coming down and in and embodying and then taking a stand for the things we are passionate about, because there's so many things, right, that need to actually be addressed and dealt with. So none of us can speak to all of them. So we've got the different things we're called to. And that will determine. I don't know, to be honest. I mean, I have a lot of hope and belief, especially just with the people that, I see in my communities and my students and my clients. I mean, I know some amazing people that are really doing their inner work and then are really showing up in their communities in however large or small their sphere of influence is in amazing ways. And I also see like all the stuff that's happening. Somebody, I'm trying to remember where I saw this, but it's just like, I really feel like right now the thing is to focus on anchoring the light in the darkness. because I think things may amp up more first before we get to that, like,
Oh yeah.
and we have to be prepared for that. And yeah, the earth is talking. I don't think Mother Earth's angry at us. I think she's sad, but I understand what you're saying with that. I just feel that everything that's happening with the earth is literally a result of our actions. Like, it's not her getting upset. It's like, we did all this and now here's the consequence on the planet. And I mean, of course, we all project what's inside of us outside. So the way that I see Mother Earth is I see her as very neutral, so it's like, well, you guys seem to need to learn through this. So this is where we're going, and she's eternal. I mean, she's been around for God knows how many billions of years. I mean, I don't even know. And, so she doesn't need to worry.
I'm definitely projecting my Asian mother to Mother Earth.
We do that. That's actually like, that's the moment of so much beautiful awakening, is just realizing the lens we see through, it totally comes from our childhood and our culture. So that we like question that and deconstruct it. And some of that is actually still amazing and beautiful and valid. And some of it we might be like, nope, don't agree with that anymore, and I'm trying to get out of like luminous light. It's from my heart chakra.
It actually makes you look very divine and angelic.
Yeah.
Very ethereal. Yes. I'm trying to be fully here in the body. No. I need to get something to put on the window. Anyhow, I'm in a new house, so I'm still getting to know the lighting.
Well, yeah. you kind of said it all during our session. I feel like this was a healing session for me, but during our talk today, but you are an astrologer who talks about embodiment and doing shadow work, but how can people use astrology and all the work that you do, which we want you to talk about, as a pathway for healing themselves and showing up to do the work?
Yeah. I will say there are two things that have been the most pivotal. Well, there's actually more, but the first two things that were the most pivotal for my awakening were astrology and yoga. Because astrology opened me up to what lied beyond just this 3D world. Like, it wakes you up to what is beyond. And there's so many ways you can take that, whether it just makes you look up instead of always looking down, or if you're into, which I am, the whole belief of actually our star origins, that we actually came from the stars. And so that's like our ancestors. All the ancient mystical cultures have stories about that, particularly my lineage, the Hawaiians. And so for me, astrology is actually like the first universal language. Of course, there's different ways of seeing, because there's Chinese astrology, and then there's Western, and then there's Vedic, and then there's Hawaiian astrology, and Indian, or I already said that, Vedic, Egyptian, whatever. So again, it's like the dialect or the language, but it is the original cosmic language, because we all looked up and had some stories to say about the stars. So for me, the study of astrology like wakes up your mind and helps you. And honestly, when you start studying astrology, it can blow your mind. I mean, there's just times where you're like, whoa. Actually, I have this great story. It's short. I had a student that studied with me, and her husband was an astrophysicist and a very science-based guy. She bought him a reading with me because she wanted him to have one. So we get on the phone and he says to me, I want you to know I don't believe in astrology. He's like, but I love my wife. So he's like, so I'm doing this. And I was like, okay, then, and I was like, great. And so we do the reading. And at the end, he's like, how did you do that? And I was like, what? He's like, how did you see this stuff from my childhood? How did you do that? And I was like, it's astrology. And so then a couple weeks later, the woman emails me and she's like, my husband's studying astrology now.
Oh, that's how you get them.
I know, it was amazing. I love because a true scientist, I have a science background. I wanted to be an astronaut and a marine biologist. A true scientist, when they see something that works, they need to understand why.
Mhm.
You know, a true scientist doesn't see something and study it and see that it works and then go, no, that's, you know, whatever.
Mhm.
So anyhow, astrology wakes this up, but then the embodiment makes sure that what you wake up here comes down and in. I mean, that was actually why I got so into embodiment. And I'm doing a class called Embodied Astrology, because when I first got into astrology, I noticed how heady it was, how it like woke up all of this like amazing, you know, energy up here and kept me looking at the stars and looking at the chart and analyzing and wondering. But then I noticed how it wasn't really helping me be embodied. I was like coming from my head and coming from spirit and going up and out. So for me, the down and in part is an important counterbalance. And yoga first did that for me. And then I got into shadow work. But I feel like astrology can be this gateway to understanding so much more than just this little small self. Like understanding the patterns of the universe and how things are interconnected. And you know, it provides this mind blown open opportunity. But then we got to take, you know, you can't just stay stuck in that. Otherwise you're just gonna your whole life be analyzing your chart but not actually doing anything with what you figure out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I love that. Was there anything else you wanted to share about your offerings and how people can work with you?
Oh yeah, so my website, I'm so sorry about the light. My website's divineharmony.com, and I do readings, I write a lot, I have a membership service. I actually have a class that's starting October 13th called Embodied Astrology, and it's a brand new class. I love writing new classes because I get in this creative space where like literally my dreams and my downloads and meditation, I'm like writing things down and I'm like weaving it together. But the class starts October 13th. And you don't need any astrology experience. It's actually not about your mind at all. It's about your body and bringing the cosmic down and in. And I have other classes like foundations, intermediate, level 1 and 2. Astrology in your shadow I love that class. I'll probably offer it in the spring. I do it once a year. And yeah, I write a lot. And a lot of it's free. So you can check it out on my website. I love to write.
Well, thank you so much, Harmony. I feel like we're all going to need all of your resources for the
Yes.
upcoming Pluto return.
Yep. Save us, please.
Yeah,
Guide us.
as we enter the shadow phase of this
Right?
return.
Yeah, well, actually, we're for the yearly cycle, we're heading into the dark of the sun. From Halloween was called Samhain in like the Celtic tradition. From Samhain until winter solstice it's like the dark of the moon. So you have a new moon, it starts a new cycle, and then it peaks at the full moon, and then it wanes or waxes rather. Sorry, no, wait, waxes, wanes. And then it goes to the dark part, which is the last few days, 3.5 days or so of the lunar cycle. And it's about endings and releasing. Well, we're actually, as of like Halloween till like the first week of November, we're entering into the dark of the sun. And it's just that time of going in, you know. This is also something that I love about astrology because it helps us attune to the natural cycles that the ancients were very attuned to, but now we've got like, you know, lights and grocery stores where we can buy things out of season, and we're so disconnected.
And Instagram.
Too much technology, too much like, what was I reading? Something about the hits of immediate gratification coming from like TikTok and likes, like screwing up with our brains and making people depressed because it was just this, you know, serotonin hit, or maybe it was another chemical.
Dopamine, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was like, it's a different hormone or chemical. And it's keeping us like in this state of like addiction.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Get out on the land, be with the trees and the birds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get in a salt bath.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, any other questions, Britt? I feel like you definitely had me thinking about a lot of stuff that I need to shadow work wise.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm excited to just begin some shadow work, and I'm going to do a deep dive into your website. We'll make sure to share it in the show notes so everyone else can too, and they can access your resources and get some of your tools and maybe even learn from you directly. Because if we could all work on ourselves a little bit, it'll just be a little bit easier, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my favorite ways of understanding integrity is all parts of self in relationship with each other, which is wholeness. And so it's like, that's also why I love this work, because it's like working on the things that have been fragmented out, that have been tucked back there, but actually bringing them back in to wholeness is what creates greater integrity. People who have high integrity is a sign of people who are working on themselves.
Hmm.
So, again, the more of us doing this, and then the more of us doing this, and then evolving into various roles as leaders in different things is like what we need, and is what is coming. It's what is happening, and I'm grateful. I'm definitely grateful for that.
Thank you so much, Harmony. Thank you for the
Thank
wisdom and your
you.
time.
This was fun.